Hello and welcome to the Outside the Cockpit post-race show powered by the Intermission Sports. And today we are talking about the drama-filled Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. We've got lots to talk about, so let's get right into it, starting with the beginning, the race start. Now, of course, Lewis Hamilton got a great start as well as Valtteri Bottas. Both covered, did a great job against Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen got an okay start, but not great to cover the inside to get past Lewis Hamilton. So Lewis Hamilton, Valtteri Bottas did their job at the beginning, but then, of course, obviously, there was some early lap shenanigans, early lap crashes, which then caused the safety car, which then set off another couple other safety cars, which ended up getting the session red flagged as well. So it was a crazy race start, but overall, it was a pretty clean start. And looking at it from 3 or 4 hours later, it was a good race start. Lewis Hamilton did a great job to cover his side and did well against Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen, had an okay start, but not the best compared to both Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas. And then looking further down the field, Sergio Perez again had a good start, almost really got close to getting past Charles Leclerc there, but then ended up locking up and nearly ran into the back of Max Verstappen, his teammate, which would have been not great for Red Bull, having Mercedes 2 cars in front and then having possible teammate crash out. But again, it was just a maddening Grand Prix with lots to talk about. So let's continue on. Obviously, after the race start, we had all the multiple red flags and crashes that we had. And again, if you watched the F2 race earlier, we saw that was the case as well with the new circuit, very narrow. It's like Monaco, but a lot faster. And I think that was the biggest issue is Monaco is a lot slower. So again, there's crashes, but it's not as high speed crashes as you're expecting. But again, in this new Jeddah circuit, it's a lot more high speed. You're going to see more crashes. We were going to expect safety cars. We weren't expecting this many red flags and safety cars, but there was at least, I think, 3 or 4 safety cars, virtual safety cars, a couple red flags as well. It was absolute madness. It's just too much to describe. And I think the biggest takeaway that we can all get away from this track is that this track is too dangerous. Things need to be changed. And I don't see Formula One racing at the circuit, or they just need to be specific on the rules, because we saw multiple incidents, even in free practice 3, where Lewis Hamilton almost collided with Nikita Mazepin as Nikita Mazepin was coming around the blind corner and nearly ran into the back of the 7-time world champion's car coming over a corner. So again, really close, lots of action, and I just don't think they need to make changes for it to be a safer circuit for them to race there. I think that's the biggest thing that they need to do if they want to continue racing. Again, it's not going to be racing at that specific circuit. There's probably potential for another bigger circuit with 34 turns, which would just be absolute even crazier as well. But regardless, lots of red flags, lots of crashes, and lots to talk about those crashes as well, and the context that brings into it, which leads me to my next point about Max versus Lewis. This is probably going to be the biggest talk about that I'm going to talk about on today's show. And I think even though being a Max fan, there's times where I've seen Max do questionable things where, that 5-second penalty, he deserved. He clearly went off the track, gained an advantage, didn't give it back. And then was obviously given the 5-second 10 penalty. Now, again, looking at the incident, the turn 27 incident, the first one when they ran into the back of each other, Max Verstappen moved off to the side. It wasn't, I don't think he moved directly all the way to the right side and let Lewis by. He slowed down enough, moved a little bit to the right side. There was enough room on the left side, but I don't think that had been communicated early enough that Mercedes was aware of basically what had happened. And they were like, okay, well, we didn't really, the FIA didn't tell Mercedes early enough, okay, you can now, they're giving you the place back. This is Max Verstappen giving you the place. So then what ended up happening is, of course, they collide. There's contact between the two, and then just Max went ahead. Max just continued, went ahead. They wasted a few laps where he could have given the place back to him, but he didn't. And he was trying to give the place back, but then he was just confused. There was lots of confusion between Red Bull, Mercedes, the FIA, and the whole bunch of things, which we'll talk about as well. And the problem that the FIA is having this season, and really the biggest problem right now is communication. But regarding Max versus Lewis, it is intensifying even more this season as they're tied now on points, 369.5. going into Abu Dhabi, which is what I wanted. I wanted to see that, but not in this way. This is a much different way. It's a much different vibe going into Abu Dhabi. Let's say, for example, Lewis Hamilton just won the race and Max Verstappen got second place. There was no safety cars, no crashes. Everyone pitted. Mercedes pulled the undercut or the overcut, whatever it is. It would be a much different vibe going into Abu Dhabi, going to the last race. But now, with this intensity, with these crashes going on, with everything that's going on, it is going to be an insane last race that everyone's going to want to tune in for sure. It's probably going to, like, everyone's going to want to watch. And it's going to be an insane, absolute thrilling battle for the title. And really just whoever finishes first, whoever finishes above the person, either first or second or whatever that position is, it's going to be huge. Obviously, Abu Dhabi is really tough for overtaking, so qualifying is going to be massive next Saturday, and I think a lot of people are going to be tuned in as well, who is going to take pole position. And kind of talking about this battle as well, is that this battle it's been intensified all season long. There's been multiple instances where they've come together. And I think as well, something that needs to be talked about is Max Verstappen's somewhat dangerous driving and how aggressive he is. And obviously, we've seen him be aggressive, a lot more aggressive in his younger days. We've seen it, he's refined it a little bit. But I think this title battle with Hamilton has brought out some of that older driving style that we're kind of used to seeing in 2016, 2017 when he was just starting, where he's just making really aggressive moves that are just very questionable. And I think that even as a Max fan, it's hard to defend him saying, okay, yeah, I can see why he got a penalty for that. Like, that's a clear penalty as well. But then on the same side, on Hamilton's side, there's been incidents where he really hasn't been penalized from the FIA for certain incidents, for certain rules. Again, I'm not the expert on the FIA, the exact sporting code or the racing code rule from the FIA, but I know, the most general rules and the racing practice that it brings. But I think that this season, we've seen an intense battle that could transition into next season, hopefully as well, with this, like, the regulations changing, and hopefully Mercedes and Red Bull are both still competitive, because it would just be absolutely insane for the race down next weekend. And the way that it does, whoever's in shit, and most likely, I think that from what I can just say as well before the pre-race show for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix next weekend, but I have a strong feeling that Lewis Hamilton is going to collect his 8th World Drivers' Championship, and Mercedes is going to win their 8th constructors championship, this season as well. They're going to take home their 8th constructor championship. I just have a strong feeling they're 28 points ahead of Red Bull right now. They would need Hamilton they would need a massive weekend from Sergio Perez and for both Mercedes to finish near the bottom of the points, or just score a massive amount of points difference right now, because as it stands, they have a massive cushion. It looks like possibly Mercedes is going to win the Constructors' Championship, but the driver's title is still up for grabs, and it's going to, go into Abu Dhabi. It's going to be absolute bonkers. It's going to be a great race weekend. Lots to talk about as well there. But the next thing I want to talk about was kind of related to Max versus Lewis, was really the FIA versus Red Bull and Mercedes, because I feel that the FIA weren't totally clear in the communication and the way that they described to the teams and the way that they informed Mercedes. They were late on informing Mercedes, which then Mercedes was late on informing Lewis, and then that resulted in the incident between Max and Lewis colliding near turn 27 at the end of pretty much the start-finish straight there at the last turn of the circuit. So really, the FIA and Michael Massey needs to get their stuff together, quote unquote, don't want to swear, but their stuff together to say, listen, okay, we need to have clear communication with the teams and between all channels saying, listen, okay, this is what we need to do. Red Bull was informed to give the place up. They moved out of the way. They slowed down. Lewis wasn't really sure what was going on. He thought there was maybe a virtual safety car. And then Max moved a little bit slightly ahead and then stopped and slowed down as well. And then he ran into the back of the car. Now you can debate either side. Okay, why didn't Lewis move out of the way? Why didn't Lewis just move fast? I think Lewis was generally confused. And I think Mercedes was generally confused why they didn't get the information sooner. So the FIA really needs to just really put that out there clear. And as well, Red Bull and Mercedes are going at each other. But I think between the two of them, there's been harsh words said between Toto Wolff and Christian Horner, both positive, negative, true and false, and how you want to read into it. But I think the important thing to look at is that the FIA, I feel like, is the real enemy between Red Bull and Mercedes. And just the real issue that's dividing them apart is just, obviously, they're the one that divide them apart because they're making all the rule, everything, all the rules and stuff like that. They're deciding anything that's happening in the race. So when you have that being the one sole decider, obviously it's like people are always going to disagree with calls. Any sport that you watch, the officials, some type of official that is making the rules and penalties are always going to get trouble. They're always going to get hate for it because they never really truly agree. And I think this weekend, again, was another show, another improvement of that, is that they're never going to get much love for that. And I think that really FIA did a bad job this weekend between F2 and in Formula One as well, and just managing really the whole situation the whole weekend with penalties. Even we saw before in FP3 with the whole like Lewis Hamilton Mazepin situation, is that drivers were told between turns 23 to 27 that you absolutely cannot, 23 to 25, you absolutely cannot be slowing down and purposely going slow on the track because it's like a very fast section. But the problem is with that is it's one part of the track. It's very hard to tell if a driver ahead of you, if they told him or not. Again, Mercedes, again, late on the chain once again to telling Lewis Hamilton that there's a driver behind him or driver in front of him, or what the situation is in front of him, happening around him. So again, it's more with Mercedes and the FIA as well. But I think on the other side as well, Red Bull didn't really, I mean, like they were fighting that position a lot between the race restart of who was to start first. And I think they did finally come to an agreement. Ocon would start first. Then it would be Verstappen, so Hamilton second, and then Verstappen third. So I think with that being the case, then you look at that like, okay, that's fair. Red Bull has accepted that, because Red Bull is very close to, letting the stewards decide, and it could have been a lot deadlier for them in terms of the decision that comes with that. So I think that looking ahead to next weekend, the stewards need to be clear on everything that goes in for the rules. They want clean racing. Everyone wants clean racing. I don't want to see another incident. Again, they want to have wheel-to-wheel racing, but I think it was just such an odd situation where somebody was trying to give the position up, and then he gave the position up, or he didn't give the position up. And then later as well, he did give the position up, but then immediately gave the position right back. And then for whatever reason, Max then just, like, he gave the position again up, and then Lewis stayed ahead because he felt that maybe for whatever reason they weren't satisfied, or he wanted to be fully sure Max was. So there was a lot of confusion going on in that instinct as well, between the passing of like the changing of positions as well. And then of course there was Max Verstappen, who was handed the 5-second time penalty that ultimately I'd say lost him the race as well, which again, you have to be punished for things that you do, even though if it was earlier in the race and you gained advantage at a certain point and you stayed in advantage, you didn't give that position up. But again, the whole thing is that he gave the position up after, he attempted to give the position up, but then he failed to the first time, and then again later. So the question is, why was he given really that penalty if he did eventually give up the position? That's what I don't understand, where that penalty comes across as. So I think that's really on the FA. Is, in my mind, that's a tough penalty to take. And then, of course, after the race, he was handed a 10-second penalty plus 2 driver points. Didn't affect his finish, still finishing second place based on the time that he finished ahead of Bottas, who eventually did just sneak by for really the third place finish, which then leads me to my next point about the most impressive driver. It's really tough to tell. I don't think either Verstappen or Hamilton deserved most impressive driver. I don't care what you say. There was bad blood between the both of them. They were driving on I think honestly, Esteban Ocon. Esteban Ocon is my driver of the day. Even though throughout the whole thing, yes, he got lucky, he made his way, but he played a great strategy and moved all the way up to the grid, was sitting in P3 for the majority of the race up until the end where he got overtaken. So it's finished P4 after Fernando Alonso finished P3, so P3. So I think that, honestly, Esteban Ocon is my driver of the day, even though I'm a Max fan. I don't think Max Verstappen definitely shouldn't have got it, nor should Lewis Hamilton got it in terms of most impressive driver. And I think, in my mind, it easily goes to Esteban Ocon. Valtteri Bottas, again, had a great race. Valtteri Bottas had a clean race, no issues. He had a little bit of contact with Kimi Räikkönen. Other than that, that was it. Nothing else there. And he had a really clean race, really great race, managed the tires well, finished P3, and it was great in the Constructors' Championship because it was really unfortunate for Sergio Perez, who got taken out as well, who got in some contact and who was out of the race, because that was big for the Constructors' battle as well. And I think that's going to be a huge play. That's going to be a huge moment, I think, a huge deciding moment in the Constructors' Championship is that Sergio Perez crashed. And I think that really is the big thing right now going into Abu Dhabi is, where does this title fight stand and where do we go from now? Because looking at the title fight right now, obviously it is, I believe, 587 to 559 or something like that. So a 28-point advantage really to versus for Mercedes over Red Bull, which is massive. It's a big, big gap. And I think that's the biggest thing right now, as I'm just pulling up the constructor standings here. Yeah, it's 587 to 559. And obviously right there. So, a bit of a gap between the two. And it's starting to increase more. And I think right now, as it stands, I would say that Mercedes has the best chance at winning the title. It would be a very odd occasion. It would take a lot of very particular race situation in Abu Dhabi. So I'm struggling for words here, for Red Bull to win, both the drivers and the, constructors world title. Valtteri Bottas would have to struggle, or Lewis Hamilton would have to struggle as well. And I think if they struggle in Abu Dhabi in any way, whatever the case is, then that's the only way I can see Red Bull winning the constructors world title. So Mercedes would win the constructors, but could potentially still lose the drivers world championship, which is what they're focused on as well, equally as much as the constructors, which you have to focus on as well if you're Mercedes. It's not just about, Lewis Hamilton winning. You're about winning the constructors, because you win the constructors, you get the bonuses, you get the bonus money, you get the extra prize money. It's a difference in the budget for sure, for next year as well. So it was an absolute crazy race this weekend. Lots to continue to talk about. Normally not much more to say, but the only thing that was my final thought to really recap everything that went on is, I would say, is that looking forward towards next week and even towards next season, all I ask for is that the FIA is clear and is able to communicate to teams faster, so that we don't have these types of incidents where there's a loss of communication or a delay in communication, which then causes, to ruins one person's race, Lewis's race, Max's race, whatever the case is. Because of that incident, he now has a 10-second time penalty and the 2 penalty points as well, which affects his, his super license as well. So again, I know I'm a Max fan. I know it can somewhat comes vibes, but I'm saying it just in general as well, for Lewis's sake and for Mercedes' sake as well, it's really tough to tell sometimes with the communication that the FAA has with the teams, that where they stand on a certain point or a decision, and when that decision comes out. Because again, Michael Massey gets, in the middle caught. He's just the race director. He's not actually the stewards at that actual race. So I think that in reality, yes, he's making that decision, but it's really down to the stewards. He can influence that decision, but not really too much. He can just point out to the stewards and push it towards that. But really, they should be trying to go to the stewards directly. And that's really on Michael Massey and FAA to really get that communication out there. Because if they had that communication out there beforehand, we possibly couldn't have seen that incident happen where they collide and they cause a collision as well. Max Verstappen doesn't get the 10-second penalty. They continue racing on. It could be, really interesting to see what happens going forward. And I think that looking ahead to next weekend, I think that Max Verstappen is going to have to put in a hell of a qualifying session, a really good qualifying session, if he wants to win that title. Because if he doesn't get first on the grid and doesn't have a good race start, Lewis Hamilton is going to win that title. I'm sorry, it's just the case. And Lewis Hamilton is one of the most generational talents that we've seen so far in F1 in the 21st century. He's done a great job. And I think we have to respect his greatness. And I think that in reality, seeing this title fight and seeing fighting with Max Verstappen proves how good of a driver he is, because everyone says, okay, Lewis Hamilton, he's not that great. He doesn't have any competition. He had Valtteri Bottas as teammate, other than Nico Rosberg when he lost in something in 2016. It's like, okay, no, you had Sebastian Vettel in 2018. We're still really close, along with other drivers as well. And then you look at other years, he nearly won in his rookie year. He is a great driver, and I have to admit that, even as Max fan. I'm not saying I hate to admit it, but you have to admit that as a racing fan, Lewis Hamilton is a great driver. He deserves to be where he is in the position, and I honestly think that in reality, when you look ahead to it, I would say that Lewis Hamilton, obviously the greatest driver of one of the greatest drivers of all time, versus Max Verstappen, he is going to win this title. I just have a strong feeling that he has a great chance over Max Verstappen, just because the experience, the momentum is going in his way. He's won the last 4 races between, Brazil. Yeah, just the last 3 races, Brazil, Qatar, and then now now Saudi Arabia. And then he's going to win the last one to win the championship. And if he's able to do that, it'd be one of the greatest title fights we've seen in the 21st century as well, similar to 1974, or even with 2016 as well, between Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton. Anyways, that's going to do it for the post-race show, for the Outside the Cockpit post-race show, powered by the Animation Sports. My name is Sam Donsk. I've been your host. Make sure to tune in next weekend because we're going to have the pre-race show as well as the qualifying watch-along for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix and the post-race show. So lots of content coming your way as we end this Formula One season with one race to go. Make sure you're following Outside the Cockpit at Outside the Cockpit and Outside the Cockpit Instagram. You can check it out presented by the Animation Sports. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out theanimationsports.com for more content. Thank you guys for watching and happy Sunday.